join me, please, as we read from Matthew chapter 13. We're going to read verses 24 through 30, and then we're going to pick up at verse 36 and read through 43. Right? So that's Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 to 30, and 36 through 43. Here begins the reading of the gospel. He put another parable before them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds?' He said to them, 'An enemy has done this.' So the servants said to him, 'Then do you want us to go and gather them?' But he said, 'No, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time I will tell the reapers, go gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" Continuing in verse 36. Then he left the crowd and went into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear." May God add greater understanding to the reading and hearing of the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. I think it's interesting, and I'll reflect back on something I said last week. It's interesting that Matthew takes what has been explained as a complex way of teaching and a very veiled and secretive way of teaching in the parables, and then explains it. Just lays it out for everybody and says, "Here's what it means." Okay, but didn't you just tell us it's complicated? Didn't you just tell us it's a very arcane way of explaining the world? Didn't you just tell us that Jesus' parables are meant to be veiled to other people? But now you're just going to lay it out? And in many passages in the Synoptic Gospels, it's clear that the disciples were the ones who had this secret knowledge. It doesn't say that Jesus gave it to them, it's just that they had it. They understood Jesus' parables. I wonder how much of this is Matthew trying to lay meaning on top of the parables. Because we know, among the parables that are shared in all three synoptics, we figure that, and I say we, I mean scholars figure, that they were things that Jesus must have said because they were carried through the tradition. Several decades later into the Gospels, they were still around, so these things that he probably did say. But I wonder then how much of this explanation was laid on top of it by the later Gospel authors in order to make it clear to us. Because if all we heard was the parable, what do you make of it? How do you understand it? Which leads me to the word explain. Do you know it's a Latin root, the word explain? And if you divide it up that way, it kind of makes sense. Ex is out of, and plane is a flat. So to explain something means to make it flat. By explaining, I would say that the author of the gospel, by having Jesus explain, takes something that is three-dimensional and has a lot of moving pieces and a lot of concepts that are not very clear or easy to grasp, and just sort of make it, if you will, the elementary school version. Which is not to say it's wrong at all. I don't want anybody to hear this or see this and go, "What do you mean? You mean that's not what the parable's about?" You mean that Matthew lied to us? That Jesus didn't say these words? No, not at all. What I'm saying is that the explanation that Matthew has Jesus provide us is very, very simplistic. So let me go back and revisit the parable with a little bit more complexity and see what you think. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to. Now, in Greek, that also could be read as the kingdom of heaven has been compared to. The kingdom of heaven is compared to. Now, does that mean that's what it's like, or does that mean that that's how people have seen it? Or that's how Jesus wants us to understand it? Or it could be any number of things. The point is, this is just an example, just an image of how things work in the kingdom. A man who sowed good seed in his field, but while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. Now, the parable is very clear that it was an enemy. Couldn't have been birds or natural causes because there was too much of it, right? If a bird comes along and drops some random seeds into your field, you're going to get a few weeds here and there, but you're not going to get them so prolifically throughout the field. So clearly, it was an enemy. And Jesus even tells us in the parable that the sower says, yeah, it was an enemy. So he has some level of knowledge that we're not privy to. But the interesting thing is, the word wheat here, the word that's translated as wheat, the Greek word is zizonia. Zizonia is not just wheat as in not just weed as a generic term. It's a very specific type of grain that the stalks resemble wheat. Now, once it comes up, the grain is black, and it's very clearly not wheat. But until it fruits, until you actually see what's at the end of the stalk, you don't know. It blends in very nicely. Now hold on, that adds a little bit of complexity. It's not like you can just go out in the field and go, that's a weed, that's a weed, that's a weed. You have to wait until it bears fruit. Come back around to that point in just a minute. So, the workers, and I point out that they're workers in here and not harvesters, because Jesus specifically tells them, no, let the harvesters take care of it at the harvest time. The workers, we'll call them the enforcers, the laborers, what do? They come and say, hey boss, somebody's done something bad to your fields. You want us to go, take care of it? Right? They're going to go out and they're going to pull up those weeds. Well, the interesting thing is, if until it fruits you can't tell, the root systems have grown together. In pulling out the bad stuff, you may be uprooting some of the good stuff. Another concept. The sower, and we're told that the sower is the Son of Man in the interpretation that Jesus provides in a few verses later. The sower understands unintended consequences, which is the other point that I'll come back around to. He says, let's do that because you might just uproot all the good stuff as well, or some of the good stuff as well. Let's just let them go until the harvest time. And at the harvest time, I will tell the reapers, the harvesters, to gather the weeds first, to get rid of them, and then to gather the wheat into my barn. All right. So not quite as flat as you might think at first glance. What does this say about the kingdom? Because if this is the kingdom, then it says that there are operators in the world systemically scattered through the world or through the kingdom in different places that look and act like wheat, that appear to be wheat, until the fruits are revealed. Until the fruits are revealed, you don't know. So let me ask you a question. If somebody were to come in here and they were homeless, smelled bad, hadn't had a shower in a while, hadn't eaten in a while. They just come in and all they're going to do is sit back in the back pew. How many of us in here would just let them come in and sit down? Just let them be. Love you, Daryl. Thank you. Yeah? What if we you knew for a fact that this person was a drug addict? What if you knew for a fact that they were a sex offender? What if you knew for a fact that they were some form of reprehensible? Would you still sit and let them be in your presence? Would you let them be in the presence of the gospel? Would you let them even see a peek of the kingdom? Well, certainly they're weeds, aren't they? Certainly they're not the kind of people we want in the church, right? Now hold on a minute. Have they really fully fruited yet? Can you really tell yet whether they're weeds or wheat? Can you? Or are you busy being one of the workers, one of the laborers? Hey, time to clean out the field, baby. Get rid of those weeds. Because what if in getting rid of those weeds, you actually got rid of potential wheat? You got rid of someone who hadn't seen themselves as someone in the image and likeness of God, someone who hadn't seen Christ in the world. What if you failed to bring them around to a vision of the kingdom, to a place where they went, wow, I'm beloved of God, and repented, shifted their life, and suddenly were bearing other fruit? You'd be uprooting wheat thinking it was weeds. It's the whole point. The whole point of the sower saying, let both grow together until the harvest, is that the sower, the Son of Man, God incarnate, Christ in the world, does not see things the way we do, but sees the bigger picture. Understands that down the road is not right now. That future growth is not necessarily visible in today's seeds. That the wheat that comes tomorrow is not visible in the shafts that grow out of the ground today. And we may take it upon ourselves to try to root out the bad. We don't always know what we're doing. We don't see the consequences of our actions. We don't take into account the unpredictable, unforeseen future. It's systemic too. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Let's spin it a different way. Let's say that you know somebody who, by all appearances, is wheat. They're a strong, upstanding member of the community. They're a pillar. They're an elected official. They're on the board of the directors at the bank. They give monumental amounts of charity. They volunteer at the soup kitchen. They do all of this. Clearly, they're wheat. And then you find out that they're embezzling. You find out that they're embezzling and cheating on their spouse, and potentially involved in a sex scandal. Wow. Turns out that maybe you didn't see wheat, or you saw wheat when you should have seen weeds, and vice versa. We are bad judges. We're just terrible at it. But thank God that we have Christ, who is not a terrible judge. And thank God we've been given the guidance to just let things grow. To treat the weeds as though they are wheat. to not try to distinguish and determine on our own, but rather to love it all and let it all grow, knowing that when it does come to fruition, the reapers will go, there's a weed, and get rid of it. We don't have to worry about it. We don't have to try to root it out. That's God's job. That's the job of others. The other thing that I don't remember what the other point I was going to make now, unless I covered it both already. I do want to point out, though, that it is, in addition to being systemic, in addition to being unpredictable, that our mission is still the same. That our calling is still the same. It doesn't matter what's on the surface, what appears to be true. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Our job is to be as Christ was in the world. Where other people saw a blind man who was beyond hope, Jesus saw someone who was beloved and forgiven. They could see. Where the world saw a Samaritan woman who'd been married 5 times and was living with a man who wasn't even her husband, Jesus saw someone who was a beloved daughter of the kingdom. Boom. She was healed. She was saved. Where the entire world saw a dead body, Jairus' daughter, Jesus said, she's only sleeping. She was awake. You can't see the way God sees. So the cure is to not try, but rather to look with the greatest possible capability you have, look at the world as Jesus would, and that way is love. That way is to see the beloved of God, God's likeness and image, God's creation, God's child, in each and every person you meet. To know that they, specifically and individually, were died for on the cross. That they, specifically and individually, were ransomed by the actions of Jesus Christ. So, I couldn't tell you whether they're weeds or wheat. All I can tell you is they're potential wheat, which changes it. I said that a couple of weeks ago. If you meet everyone you meet, you think of as a potential disciple, changes how you interact with them. The same thing in this parable. You treat everyone you meet as potential wheat, as potential crop of kingdom fruits. Love, peace, brotherhood, understanding, grace. All of it. We're incapable of judgment, so we leave that to God. The promise is a place in the kingdom to be gathered into the barn. And I don't want you to take that literally, because I've been in barns. They're not great places to spend eternity. But the symbolism is powerful. You're going to be collected with all the other wheat. And you're going to go to a place where you can stay with the others that are like you, the others who love, the others who serve, the others who see God's image and likeness in everyone, the others who have been given grace, the others who have received God's love in Christ and have shared it. I don't know about you, but those are the kind of people I want to spend my time with. Humble, loving, charitable, always a pleasant word to say, always willing to embrace you, to lift you up, support you. I'd like to think that's how I am. Maybe on my best days I'm that way. But to be around those kind of people all the time, that's the promise of the kingdom. But you might not have all of them there in the barn with you if you've gone out and tried to weed some of them out before the harvest time. Because it's not just the promise of your reward that's at stake. It's the potential of others to also live in the kingdom, to be brought into the harvest, to be brought into the barn. And knowing how beautiful it is to be in the kingdom, knowing how amazing it feels to be loved and to love the people of God, I don't want anyone to miss a chance at that because of my bad judgment. So I'll just wrap it up by saying, our calling is not to look out into the field and determine who the weeds and who the wheat are, to pull the weeds, or to do any of the labor of the reapers, but rather to let all things grow together. I would even say to encourage growth. To see everything and everyone as potential wheat, as having the fruit of the kingdom within it, within them, and fostering that, rather than trying to pull them up by the roots. Fertilize, water, let them grow. Love them all and let God sort them out. That's how you serve the sower. That's how you perform the labor of the kingdom. Amen.